Fats are an essential part of a healthy diet. They are the major source of energy and important structural component of cells. Fats have a 3-carbon backbone called glycerol as well as fatty acid chains. Fatty acid is basically a string of carbon atoms and hydrogen atoms. Hydroxyl group of the glycerol molecule binds to an hydrogen atom of the fatty acid chain. One water molecule is released and the two molecules link up through condensation process. This eventually will form monoglyceride, diglyceride or triglyceride. The chemical structure of fatty acid will determine the types of fat formed. Fats are categorized into 4 main types, which are saturated, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, and trans fat. In our video, we will discuss about how fats will impact humans' health by relating to their chemical structure, physical and chemical properties, as well as the reaction involved. By all these comparisons, we will be able to differentiate between unhealthy and healthy fats, thereby coming up with a solution to reduce high-fat food products. The objectives of this video are to identify the problem relating to the consumption of food products with high amount of unhealthy fats, to propose a feasible solution to substitute unhealthy fats with healthy fats, and to discuss the effect of unhealthy fats and healthy fats food product on humans' health. One problem identified is the excess consumption of food products with high amount of unhealthy fats, especially saturated and trans fat, can potentially cause health issues such as heart disease, obesity, and high blood pressure in individuals' bodies. Saturated fats have no carbon-carbon double bonds in their chemical structure because the carbon atoms are bonded to the maximum number of hydrogen atoms. This results in straight fatty acid chains that are packed closely together, allowing the fats to be solid at room temperature with higher melting point compared to unsaturated fats. Saturated fats are more stable, have stronger intermolecular forces, and harder to be hydrolyzed.
Trans fat is a result of an unsaturated fat that contains a trans double bond between carbon atoms. Trans fats have a higher melting point than cis fats. Due to the added energy from the hydrogenation process, the activation energy is reached to convert the cis isomers of the unsaturated fat to a trans isomer. Because the molecule of saturated fatty acid is very stable and hard to break up, it can store and provide more energy than carbohydrates or proteins, thus making it more likely to stick to the body as cholesterol. Meanwhile, trans fatty acids have triglycerides with trans double bonds that cannot be accommodated in the small, high-density lipoproteins. Thus, trans fats are easily digested and their fatty acids and glycerol are absorbed by cells lining the intestines. Unsaturated fatty acids are converted to saturated fatty acids by the hydrogenation reaction, which involves the reaction of oils with hydrogen. It is the addition of hydrogen to an alkene which results in an alkane. Trans fats goes through partial hydrogenation, so the hydrogen atoms end up on different sides of the chain. Hydrogenated oils are used in the food industry in the manufacture of many foodstuffs. The use of hydrogenated oils helps to prolong the shelf life of food and maintain flavor stability. The purpose is so that they don't spoil as quickly as unsaturated fats because unsaturated fats oxidize much faster than trans fat. However, hydrogenation transforms some of the fat molecules into trans fat, which are even more unhealthy for humans. An example of a food product that's produced during partial hydrogenation is margarine. Vegetable oils are not solid at room temperature like butter. To make them solid for use in margarine, food scientists chemically change their structure using hydrogenation. This involves exposing the oils to high heat, high pressure, hydrogen gas, and a metal catalyst. We can harden the oil by hydrogenating it in the presence of a nickel catalyst. Conditions like the precise temperature or the length of the time that the hydrogen is passed through the oil are controlled so that some of the CC double bonds are hydrogenated. We need to hydrogenate enough of the bonds to give the final texture that is desired. The harder the margarine, the more trans fat it contains. Soft tub and liquid margarines contain less trans fat than harder stick margarines. During partial hydrogenation, some of the unsaturated fatty acids, which are normally found as the cis isomer at the double bonds, are changed to a trans double bond and remain unsaturated. Trans fatty acids of the same length and weight as the original cis fatty acids still have the same number of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens, but they are now shaped in a more linear form, as opposed to the band form of the cis isomers. The main difference between a trans fat and a cis fat is that cis bond is the high energy configuration because it forms with the two largest substituents on the same side of the double bond. whereas trans bonds are the low energy configurations where the two largest substituents are on the opposite sides of the double bond. Trans fats are derived from hydrogenated oils and processed foods, which are the worst fats for human health. People consuming both saturated fats and trans fats experience a significant increase in LDL cholesterol without a corresponding rise in HDL cholesterol. Compared to cis fats, which increase both LDL and HDL, trans fat increase LDL but lowers HDL, which means that it can clog the arteries since it increases triglycerides in the bloodstream and promotes systemic inflammation. Trans fat prevents the body's ability to metabolize essential fatty acids like the EFA, including omega-3, leading to changes in the phospholipid fatty acid composition of the arterial wall, thereby increasing the risk of coronary artery disease. In 1980, the Nurses' Health Study cohort analyzed data from 80,000 women free of diagnosed CHD. During the 14 years of study, there were about 900 cases of acute myocardial infarction or death from CHD. From the analysis, it was found that the substitution of 5% of carbohydrate energy intake with saturated fat was associated with 17% increase in the risk of CHD, while the substitution of 2% of energy from carbohydrates with equivalent calories from trans unsaturated fat was associated with almost a doubling of risk. The authors also estimated that the replacement of 5% of energy from saturated fat with the energy from unsaturated fat would reduce the risk by 42%. From the data analysis, we can clearly see that the consumption of saturated and trans fat was associated with higher risk compared to polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats.
As we know that food that are high in saturated and trans fat are harmful to human health. Therefore, these high-fat food products should be substituted with monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fat. Trans fatty acids that are formed during partial hydrogenation of vegetable oil are shown to be detrimental to cardiovascular health. Therefore, we come up with a solution, which is to produce trans fat-free and spreadable margarine through inter-esterification processes, which can still produce margarine with desirable taste and textures as of partial hydrogenated margarine. Monounsaturated fat have one double bond between carbon atoms. Examples of monounsaturated fat include oleic acid. Polyunsaturated fat have more than one double bond between carbon atoms. Examples of polyunsaturated fat include omega-6 and omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acid. Due to less saturated with hydrogen atoms, the molecules of unsaturated fat are less stable. They can be easily broken down into monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fatty acid, which help in lower LDL cholesterol level in our body. Inter-esterification is the replacement of one or two of the unsaturated fatty acid in a triglyceride by a saturated fatty acid without changing the fatty acid composition. It involves combining highly saturated fat and unsaturated oil in a triglyceride in order to minimize the content of saturated fatty acid and does not produce any trans fat. The fatty acid reattach to glycerol in a more random manner so that each glycerol molecule will have some unsaturated and some saturated fatty acid attached to it. Some glycerol will have two saturated side chains and one unsaturated, while others will have one saturated and two unsaturated. The end result is equivalent to a partial hydrogenated fat without having to go through the process of hydrogenation. Inter-esterification is an alternative method of producing solid fat that does not generate trans fatty acid. Inter-esterification can reduce the saturated fatty acid content of the final product up to 20% while maintaining suitable physical property. Inter-esterification helps stabilize and increase the amount of crystals which are needed for smooth textures and functional property. A softer product like margarine with a low melting point and without phase separation can be produced through inter-esterification. Eating trans fat-free margarine is healthier because it is high in unsaturated fat and devoid of artery-clogging trans fat. Therefore, risk of cardiovascular health disease is reduced.
Next, the effects of monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats is that it lowers the levels of low-density lipoprotein and raises the levels of high-density lipoprotein in our bloodstream. HDL is known as a good cholesterol because it helps to remove and carry away other cholesterol in our blood vessel to be eliminated in the liver, thus lowering the risk of getting coronary diseases such as heart attack. High HDL levels are able to lower our health risk because it reduces fat deposition in the lining of our artery walls. As mentioned earlier, HDL cholesterol helps to transport the excess cholesterol out from our arteries into our liver. The liver will then emulsify the fats, and the fats are eventually removed from our bodies. On the other hand, high LDL levels will cause the deposition of plaques on the wall of our arteries, which will then cause the narrowing of the lumen. This will lead to many complications such as high blood pressure and heart attack. With that said, higher levels of HDL minimizes our risk of contracting coronary diseases because fats are not deposited in our arteries but are transported to our liver. In conclusion, food that are high in saturated fats and trans fats will raise our LDL levels and lower our HDL levels, thus affecting our health by increasing our risk of getting cardiovascular diseases. While on the other hand, food that contains monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats raises our HDL levels and lowers our LDL levels, which makes it a good substituent. Partial hydrogenation of margarine will cause the production of trans fat. To avoid this from happening, an interesterification process should be carried out to produce margarine instead. Interesterification process produces margarine with the same desired properties as of partial hydrogenation process and without the production of trans fat that will harm humans' health. With this solution, our health risks are greatly reduced to the minimum.